Am I audible for online or not? Okay. So in yesterday's session we discussed more about the data format what we are using as part of REST API implementation. Okay. So what data formats we are using generally? So whenever a client sending request to our REST service to the implemented backend REST service, the data always going to come maybe either as a XML or JSON. So most of the times, okay, many projects will prefer JSON or XML nowadays. It's purely JSON nowadays, and the second priority is XML. But we should know how to work with the XML, how to work with the JSON. So for that, what is the knowledge you have to know is to work with either JSON or XML. From Java side, you don't need to spend much time. Or Spring Boot side, you don't need to spend much time. If you are good with JSON mapping or how to work with the JSON data format, okay, the only thing is you should know how to write down XML files, how to write down JSON files. But our Java side or Spring Boot side, REST API implementation level, programming point of view, both are going to give same options, same kind of implementation, only very small differences you will see. But you should know very well about the XML and as well as JSON rules and regulations. How to define XML data, how to define JSON data, how to define JSON arrays, JSON objects, JSON nested objects, JSON arrays, nested arrays. So you should know all these formats. What is JSON keys? What is JSON properties? So you should have knowledge of JSON as well as XML language also. You should know what is the XML rules and regulations, how to define parent tag, child tags, child to child, okay, array of elements in the XML, how to define array of elements in the XML. You should know all those things. That is what the only difference is going to, you will see while supporting either JSON or XML in our REST services point of view. Okay. So now going further, whenever we are working with REST API implementation or in any environment of a project where we are implementing the REST services, we are going to use either JSON or XML data format. What is the meaning of using JSON or XML data format in this specific environment, in this specific situation? Client means who? Who is triggering the request? Who's sending the request? So them we are calling it, those applications we are calling as a client applications. Now client sending a request. And then when client sending the request, the data has to be shared always in the format of either JSON or XML. So is it client dependency? Who is deciding here the data format? Either it is a JSON or XML or any one of them. Who is deciding which data format has to be shared when you want to access the REST API service? Who has to declare it? Is it the REST API implemented application, or who is calling your REST API that application? It's all implemented application. So I am providing REST services. So I am deciding you have to share only JSON. Then client applications has to send only JSON data format. If they are sending XML, I'll say like unsupported media type. So that means I'm not supporting XML. So I'm supporting only JSON. So that means the data format is always decided or defined by the API implemented application. Whoever is implemented the API, at that time we are going to define the API has to support which data format. So at what time we are configuring the service, when you are writing the REST API service, at that time we are going to configure this REST service will allow only JSON. This REST service will allow only XML, or this REST service will either JSON or XML. Like that, whenever we are implementing the REST API service, then we are going to configure which data format it has to support. How to do that and all, we will see. Okay. So, and after that, we taken a couple of examples about the XML language. So, at least everyone knows about the XML earlier, but nobody knows about the JSON. Okay. Nobody knows about the JSON data format. So tell me here, what is the JSON again here? So we should know more about the JSON data formats, how to define JSON data formats and everything. JSON arrays, JSON objects, you should have very knowledge, you should have all the knowledge. So JSON is a data format. Okay. So generally it contains only plain text format, a simple text format. Okay. So generally how we are defining JSON properties? Key colon value pair combination, key colon value, and keys are always defined inside the double quotes. Values depends on the data type. If it is string, double quotes we have to declare. If it is numeric value, whether it is a floating value or not floating value, then we no need to pass double quotes. We can pass directly value. If it is a Boolean value or null value, no need of double quotes also. Okay, so what is a JSON object here? So JSON object is simply a collection of JSON properties. So a key value pair will be called as a JSON property. What it is? A single key value pair, I can call it as a JSON property. So for example, what is the JSON property here? Name. What is the JSON property here? Email. Like that, I can call. So a JSON object is nothing but a group of JSON properties, right? So now, from this, can I call this as a JSON object? Is this a JSON object or not? So how we are saying that it is a JSON object? Because it's started with the curly braces. So when in JSON always, when we are using curly braces in the sense it representing JSON object format. JSON object format. If you are using square braces, it representing the arrays, JSON arrays format. So for example now, if I use it like this, so what is the concept of it is? Yes. Inside JSON array, JSON object. Inside JSON array, how many objects can I define like this? Comma, next object. Comma, next object. So array of JSON objects. So in this format, array of JSON objects. So you should know all these things. That is what I told you. Okay, even XML point of view also. Okay, so this is a simple JSON object. Okay, fine. So we will see now implementing a REST API by taking JSON data formats and all. We will see now programming point of view. We discussed only theory, how JSON looks like, how JSON is going to define data formats, JSON rules and regulations we discussed. Okay, so here now see we will implement the REST services slowly. Okay, so in this case, let's take this use case. I'm sending first which data format from the front end. Assume front end is implemented on the React or whatever it is, or it might be any other application also. I told you REST services application or the REST API application or REST API implemented application is portable to any other programming language application. So anyone can send request to our application by calling our REST services. That is what the main use case of the REST API. So for example, in front end point of view, if you are thinking, so whenever user clicked on the register button, and how many values coming back to the backend application now to our REST service? 4 values. In this specific scenario, 4 values. What it is? Name, email, as well as password and contact. Okay, fine. And at the same time, now as per REST API architecture or REST API implementation, whenever user clicked on the register button, so the data is coming this time as to the backend application as a HTML data format or a JSON data format. JSON data. Now we decided all our REST services we are going to implement by using only JSON data format. Okay. We are going to accept request data as a JSON and I will generate response as a JSON data. So this is what I defined in my application implementation level. So now in this case, okay. So this entire data is converted as a JSON object. Whatever user entered, so the data converted as a JSON object. Now at the same time, the JSON reaching to where? Our Spring Boot application. Spring or Spring Web, whatever it is. So it is reaching to Spring Web Application. Spring Web Application. So at the same time, Spring Web Application is a Java language application, right? So Java language can understand JSON directly. Is there any relation with JSON versus Java? No, JSON is a independent data format. There is no relation with the Java language. Java is a different language. Java is a programming language. JSON is only data format. So JSON can understand by the Java language. Java is going to understand JSON. Java always understand which format? An object. Java objects, object oriented programming language. So in Java language, we have to make sure everything in the Java object format. But we are getting what data format? JSON data format. So now what Java cannot understand the JSON data format. So JSON is an individual, Java is an individual. JSON is a different data format. JSON is a different language. Java is a different language. Then what Java is going to do, or what in this scenario Spring Web Application is doing, let's try to understand now. So generally, okay, so what will happen in this case? Assume, okay, name, email, password, contact. So yesterday I already told you same kind of scenario. Now this is what we are discussing. Now assume from the client, okay, client I have. Now user clicked on the register button and then the body converted as a JSON. So front end React people knows that how to convert as a JSON data and all. Okay, it's their headache. Okay, name, colon, some value. So I'll just give you, I will give you a value here. Okay, so something like email, colon. It's better to copy paste so that we can save time. Okay, so now assume user entered this data. Okay, it converted as JSON data format. Now JSON reach into our Spring Web Application. So the JSON data directly reach into our Spring Web Application in our controller layer level internally. Then at the same time, Spring Web Application is nothing but a Java application. So it's a Java application. So Java application cannot understand, Java language cannot understand JSON data format. Okay, so then what Spring Web Application will do internally? So that is what yesterday we discussed. So when we don't know a common language, when we don't know common language in between you and me, then what is the help you are taking? But at the same time, we have to make sure an activity. We have to complete some activity. Then what we will do? We will take some converters help, some translators help, right? So based on that, what we will do? We will complete our activities. We will complete our executions. So similarly here also, the Spring Web Application internally maintaining a concept called as HTTP message converters. So what it is? HTTP message converters. HTTP message converters. So internally Spring Web module, Spring Web Application maintaining a concept called as HTTP message converters. So what is the meaning of HTTP message converters? Here it is. Okay. So the name itself telling what it is saying. HTTP message converter. So that means in this case, HTTP message converters. So please note down this point. HTTP message converters will make an activity of converting the incoming request data or payload. I will tell you what is the meaning of payload also. Request data or payload to Java objects based on content type header, based on content type header. So I'll show you all these details. So in this case, what it is, what is the point I told you? HTTP message converters will make an activity of converting the incoming request, payload or data to Java objects based on content type header. So here, what is the meaning of content type header also? I'll tell you, or I can simply give you content type header only. Okay, you know, I'll tell you what it is. And similarly, I'll write down one more point. We'll make an activity of converting outgoing response data or payload to respective data format based on accept header value. So you cannot understand what is header and all, but I'll try to do that. We will have a concept of headers, then you will understand again. Okay. So what are the 2 points I written here? So the HTTP message converters internally, Spring Web application maintaining a concept called as HTTP message converters. So what these HTTP message converters are doing? The request data or payload. So what is the payload here? Have you ever heard about the payload? So anyone knows about the payload? Okay, so no problem. See here. Generally, as of now, we are calling this one as a, in which terminology? Once user clicked on the register, a request object is created, and that request object is going to the server level application or controller level application. So we are calling this one till now as a request. What? Request body. Okay, whatever terminology we know. So we are calling it as a request body. So here, generally, couple of people are in a real-time oriented when we are working in the projects or in couple of other programming languages also, especially most of the times in the REST API implementation, the content, the data format, whatever is generated as a request body or whatever content is generated as a JSON point of view or whatever it is. So this content will be called as by some of the people as a payload also. What it is? The request content called as payload. It's a simple terminology. That's all. Don't worry. It's not a new concept. Simply you can remember the data, whatever the data going as a request level, that is calling as a payload. So similarly, can I call a payload in response point of view also or not? For example, you are returning order information that is going to the client as a JSON data format. So in this case, the JSON response, whatever I received as a response, can I call it as a response payload? Yes. Request payload, response payload is nothing but what? Simply the actual JSON content. If it is XML, yes, XML payload, JSON payload. Simply people will call it as a payload. Response body, request body. Simply the request body is calling as a, the data of request body is calling as a payload. The data of response body is calling as a payload. So you are understanding the point. Payload is nothing but not a new concept. Simply the parameters, the JSON properties, the final content, whatever, the final body, we are just calling it as a payload. Request or response content will be called as payloads. Okay, it's a simple small terminology. Okay, so see here now, the first point is the incoming request or payload is converting to the Java objects. Who is doing all this concept? HTTP message converters. Okay, fine. Now the next point, what I'm going to discuss here it is, okay, we have HTTP message converters. The data, incoming data is which data format? Incoming is always request only, right? So for example, in our case, I will getting JSON. Okay. So then HTTP message converters, what it is doing? Converting that data to Java object. Okay. So JSON payload or data I can call. So finally it is converting as a Java object. Java object. And at the same time, to create Java, to create Java object, we need a Java class or not always. Without class, can we create object? No, right? So that means even HTTP message converter will make JSON to Java. But at the same time, you have to provide a Java class to the HTTP message converter or not. Hey converter, please map or please convert this JSON data to this respective Java class. Like that, you are going to give a class also. You are going to give a class information to the HTTP message converters. Then the incoming JSON data is going to be converted as a Java object. Whatever the Java class you given to the HTTP message converter, only that respective Java class object will be created by taking this data. So that means in this case, what is going to happen? For example, this is what the payload body, request body or JSON body payload, whatever it is. So this is what I have here, right? Now for this, what I have to do? It's a JSON. It coming as a request. This is coming as a request. Now for equivalent to this, I have to write down a Java class or not? Is it automatically going to be created by the converters? No. We have to write down a simple Java class based on these JSON properties. So what you have to do? Define a Java or a Pojo class. Define a Pojo class based on JSON payload data format. Okay. So what we have to do now? We have to write down a JSON. We have to define a Pojo class inside our project based on the JSON data format. So how many keys I have in JSON? 4. So JSON, this is a array or object. JSON point of view. JSON object. 4 properties I have, right? So that means when you are writing Java classes also, so you have to make sure based on the JSON properties, define Java properties based on JSON keys. Okay, step number 1. So that means, for example, I'm writing like this, public class. So class name, I will give anything, like I given user. So tell me how many properties I have to define now? 4. So it is something like table versus entity class, right? So in JPA point of view, when I given you SQL table, okay, what you guys written? A entity class. Entity class is nothing but Pojo class. Simply you written a Pojo class. What are the rules you followed for the entity versus Pojo class? That they based on the data type of the column, you define the Java data type or not. If your SQL table column data type is varchar, then what you taken? String. If it is something like number, okay, without precision, what you taken? Either integer or long, right? If it is number data type with precision value, we taken double or float, right? So kind of concept. Okay. So similarly, now tell me how many properties I have to define? 4 properties. Similarly, one more rule we have to understand here it is. Can you tell me what is the second rule? Okay. Make sure JSON property name. See, property name is nothing but what? Key. JSON property is name is nothing but key name. Okay. Or equal to Java property name. Simple. That's what I remember. I reminded you. Entity class names. When entity class column name is equal to Java property name, then what you are doing? We are avoiding at the rate column or not? So in case both are different, then we are using at the rate column, and inside at the rate column, what value we are giving? The actual SQL column name, as it is same concept. For example, now in this case, string, what is the first value? First property, name. Second one, string, email. Third one, string, password. Fourth one, can I take long? Yes. Long, contact. Okay, now my Pojo class is completed or not? So assume you written setter, getters and everything. Okay, setters, getters we written. So now equivalent to JSON, we return a respective Java class or not. Now what you will do, you will give this class name. So you will tell, please convert it to this user object. Whenever so and so endpoint for slash user register point of view, whenever this REST service is triggered with this JSON payload, so you're telling to the HTTP message converter, convert the request payload to the respective Java class. What is the class name? User is the class name. Similarly, tomorrow, if I have one more REST service for the add product, slash add slash product, I return one more REST service. I am getting product details, product ID, product name, product price, expiry date, manufacturing date, like that. I got some 10 properties. From the front end point of view, I am getting the data. So then, do you need to create one more Java class or not? One more Java Pojo class you have to create based on that product information or based on that production JSON payload or not? Yes, you have to create. Then, whenever you are writing the REST service, something like add slash product, then you will tell to the HTTP message converter, or you are going to configuring to the Spring Web module, please convert this class, the incoming JSON payload to so and so respective Java class or respective Java object. Like that, whatever the Java class you are going to write down, the class information you are going to give. So if you see here, okay, so tell me here, if I given at the rate controller, and what I am giving always? Response body. So whenever I give an at the rate REST controller, internally I am nothing but at every method level, we are giving response body or not, indirectly. So you got the point? So whenever I use at the rate REST controller at class level, so nothing but at every method level, indirectly, we are using at the rate response body annotation or not. So we are using at the rate response body annotation. So in this case, what is happening? The respective return value of method is converting as a response body. So in our last class, I written order class. Simply I returned order information. So how you got this response? Okay, let me show you. Yeah, it started. Okay, so I have already order info. So how you got the data? JSON data, right? So now, in this case, what HTTP message converter is doing? Is it converting request to Java? Fine, we are going to do that. At the same time, what HTTP message converters are doing? Converting Java to JSON also. The vice versa concept. Now, whenever, okay, so in this case, JSON to Java is converted. Similarly, whenever you are returning some response, okay, you are returning a Java object. So now tell me, in this case, the Java object is going to be understandable by the front end technologies or maybe any another programming languages applications? No, right? So that means what we have to do, they send request in the JSON. They will understand only JSON. So what we have to do, Java object should be converted to JSON or not? Should be converted to JSON. So in this case, who is converting again your Java object to JSON object? HTTP message converter. Okay, fine. So I given @ controller now. So I'm sending request for the order info again. So I'm sending request to do the order info again. So that means generally what is the one step I have to do here when I given @ controller? We have to define @ response body. Yes, good. So I did not define. What is going to happen? See now. Is it restarted? Yes. Okay, let me send. Now what happened here? Is it converted? So what we missed, what we got? We missed providing @ response body. So that's why you got this exception or you got this error. So that means in the step what you understood. So you are telling to the Spring Web application, please convert the method return value of Java object order to the JSON object. How you are telling? By using an annotation called as response body. Now I'm telling to the Spring Web application, hey web application, whenever I am returning the order value or any Java object I am returning, please convert it to Java object to JSON object. Please convert it to Java to JSON object. So how you are configuring, how you are informing to the Spring Web application in this case? By using a single annotation called as @ response body. Okay. Now in this case, you are very clearly telling, please convert the method return value as a JSON data format and give that JSON data to the client. Give that JSON data to the client here. So which annotation is making, invoking the HTTP message converter to convert from Java to JSON? @ response body annotation, right? So let me send the request one more time. This time you got the response again or not? You got the response again. So that means in a response point of view, so which annotation is helping us? Response body annotation. So that means whenever you give an @ response body annotation, internally web application is invoking the HTTP message converter and it is asking the HTTP message converter, please convert Java to JSON and send that JSON data to the client as a response. Now think in the reverse point of view. Now whenever you are getting JSON as a request time, it is reaching to the controller. So automatically the JSON is going to be converted as a Java. So I told you we have to configure or we have to inform to the Spring Web module or HTTP message converter, like please convert this JSON to this respective Java class. Then how we are going to inform? In a sentences, in English sentences, can we inform? No, right? It's kind of like one more annotation. Assume one more annotation. Guess what is that annotation? @ request body annotation. Now generally in our serverless time or in our previous Spring Web application also, whenever you got the data from the form, from the JSP form, what is the request object you used? HTTP servlet request, right? So in this case, are we talking about the servlets request, all these things? It's a plain Java XML kind of concept. So here, what you are going to use is @. So in the method parameter level, I will show you that. We will define right away. You are going to use some annotation called as request body and you are going to give which class has to be converted. Now in this case, what is going to happen? The JSON coming here. And you told you're configuring with this Spring Web application as, hey, convert the respective JSON as a request body and convert it to this Java object. Then what internally Spring Web application will do? Okay, as part of this REST API, whatever the payload coming as a JSON, it is converting as a request body internally and converting as a request body in the sense converting as a Java object. So which Java object? user. So because you written which class? User class for this JSON payload or not? So that is how. Now for example, in this case, the HTTP message converter will convert JSON to Java object. Because of which annotation? Request body annotation. For example, I removed request body annotation once I define the REST service. Now tell me JSON is going to convert it as a Java object? No. So then which annotation you have to use? Request body. You got the point now? Request body, response body, how internally the message conversions are going to happen? JSON to Java. So Java to JSON. Yes, Java to JSON. Which annotation? Response body. So that means you are returning as a response. JSON to Java. JSON always coming from the other clients to our Java application. So JSON to Java. Which annotation? Request body annotation. Okay, please remember these 2 points. Code implementation we will see. Okay, and before that, I would like to discuss one more point also. So these are all internal details, and at the same time, you should know very well. I mean, you should remember all these things. These are all things will be asked in interviews. How you are implementing a REST API. That means they are asking you the process, whatever we are discussing. You have to tell them very clearly, if my application is decided as request and responses as a JSON data format, okay, then the client is sending JSON data. So when it comes to the backend application, I'm going to write down some implementation or a controller method by taking some request body annotation so that JSON will be converted as a Java object. And internally, who is converting that? HTTP message converters provided by the Spring Web application. So similarly, Java to JSON also done by the same HTTP message converters only, but as a response body. So when you declare @response body, then only it is converting as a Java to JSON point of view, right? So that is the purpose. Every time you have to write down @response body. So to avoid that only, in a REST services implementation, we are always using which annotation? REST controller annotation. We are always using REST controller, so that indirectly every method is having @response body or not. Okay, so please. After 1 week, no one will say yes. I know. If I ask the same question after 1 week, this method internally contains @response body or not? No one will say yes. You will be in a position like thinking. So please don't make sure that I'm okay. So please practice every day. If you are not revising or if you are not practicing, you will forget all these things. But very, very important things. This is all real time. You guys are asking sometimes, sir, can you give me a real time project? Can you explain as a real time project? I'm telling you, this is real time projects only. I will show you that. That's what I told you. I will show you at least 1 or 2 snapshots from a real time project. I will show you what is the code they are writing. Even if possible, I will show right now my current project only. Okay, I will show you definitely. Somehow I will show you 1 or 2 REST services, how it is implemented in my current project. Then you will realize whatever we are writing, 90% is common in my project also. So don't think something else is going to happen. Only thing is you have to make sure, increase the complexity of practice. Don't. Okay, so when it's told for 4 properties, text boxes, but you have to increase your complexity with some radio buttons, some checkboxes, okay, some kind of drop downs. Increase your complexity when you are doing the practice. As a training, it's not possible to take radio button, checkboxes, drop downs, all these things. Okay, so but you have to increase the complexity of your practice. But at the same time, I'm explaining very well and internally what is happening also. Okay, now before going to the implementation, I will tell you one more point also. Okay, so see here, sometimes I'm sending the JSON. At the same time, can I send there is a possibility of supporting XML also or not? Yes. For example, my application decided as even I'm going to support XML also. JSON as well as XML also, or only XML, or only JSON. Anything you can support as a REST API implementation level. So in this case, I decided like XML point of view. Now in this case also HTTP message converter will do same activity. What? The XML payload converted to Java object. You have to write down. Now for this XML payload, you have to write down what? A Java class. So how we are going to write down in this case also? 4 properties: string name, string email, string password, long contact. That's how you have to make sure. That's what I told you in the before starting the session. Don't think XML versus JSON supporting point of view, you are going to write down a different kind of programming. No, almost only thing is in place of JSON, you are sending the XML. In place of XML, you are sending the JSON. Okay, 1 or 2 small headers values you have to change. That's all. But programming point of view, conversion from Java to JSON, Java to XML, XML to Java. Okay, so XML, JSON to Java. This is all again internally same process. Same formula is applied by the Spring Web application internally by using HTTP message converters. But at the same time, understand here one more technical point. JSON, HTTP message converter. Okay. So request body that we know that. So anyway, we have to define that different story, and Java. Right? Similarly, I will define response point of view. So you are sending JSON request converted as Java. Similarly, Java to JSON. Okay, here again, JSON. This is what the flow we discussed, right? Now in this case, first we are taking only JSON use case only. Fine. So here, this is all our backend application, and assume this is a client application, whether it is a front end or any other Python application, whatever it is. Okay, so see here now. This is all we discussed as of now. But at the same time, the HTTP message converter is not going to do automatically JSON to Java, Java to JSON. So the HTTP message converter is a concept converting from JSON to Java, Java to JSON. But individually, the JSON to Java, Java to JSON conversion individually by HTTP message converter is not possible. So that means what here Spring Web application is doing us, suggesting us, there are some third-party libraries available. What it is? Third-party libraries. What is the meaning of third-party libraries? Third-party library in the sense, generally it's a terminology. Okay. So simple. The library is not part of Spring framework. It's external to Spring. Those kind of things generally we'll call it as a third-party library framework. Third-party libraries. That means out of the Spring framework. Simply. Okay. Now in this case, we have something like message converter libraries. Message converter libraries. So that means from different vendor. That's all. Okay, thanks. So message converter libraries. So what it is, individually, it simply automatically JSON is going to convert as a Java. For that, we have to write down some Java logics, right? So, okay, parsing, take everything as a string. So generally, if I given to you a JSON string, JSON data to you, and I asked you in a core Java application point of view. Okay, in a core Java application point of view, I told you, I given as a like this name colon value and something like age and all. And I ask you, please convert this JSON string to JSON data to Java object. So what you will do then? Somehow you will do some logic or not? Okay, first, maybe you are converted. Somehow you are using some techniques. You identify curly brace, then you will go to the first key, name, and set take value from that colon. Okay, you are splitting based on the comma. String array based on the comma. So then what it will get? Name colon, delete. Another string, another value is age comma, age colon, so and so value 30 or whatever it is, like that. Then again from that, you are going to split based on the colon. So then right side value is value. then you are going to assign that value to your Pojo class or not. So this is the logic you have to write down or not. Right? So is it possible to every time again writing kind of JSON to Java? No, right? So that's why again third party libraries are there. There are some companies already provided all this logic in a jar file. Okay. So what we have to do simply get that jar files attached to your project so that your JSON to Java, Java to JSON conversion is going to happen by using those libraries. So similarly, we have so many message converters. So like the more popular one is Jackson API jar files. Okay, one of the company Jackson. Okay, so I'll show you. And one more you have JSON also, JSON. So these are all like Lombok. Like Lombok is what? Is a different vendor, different company. They provided Lombok jar file. What is the purpose of Lombok? Avoiding the setter getters so that automatically in the background they will generate. But they will generate while compiling the Java class. Dot class level, you will always have a dot class file always going to contain setters or not? In Lombok point of view. Always. Otherwise, Java don't know who is Lombok. Lombok is just like a framework, a third party tool. Similarly, in this case also, if you are using this third party libraries, Jackson jar files or JSON jar files, the purpose of these jar files is what? What is the purpose of these jar files? Converting JSON to Java, Java to JSON. Those are all entire logic provided by these vendors, these companies. Okay. So now in this case, Spring Web Application is saying, I will take care of everything, but your responsibility is when you are using JSON, please add the message. Okay, I will JSON pointer. Please add JSON message converter jar files to class path. So what it is expecting always? Internally, the entire functionality is going to be done by what? HTTP message converter. But for that HTTP message converters, we have to supply the actual JSON to Java, Java to JSON logic implemented jar files. So for that, what you have to do? Download the jar files, attach to your project. Okay, build path or class path, something like that. Then automatically, Spring Web Module, whenever you are sending JSON to the Spring Web Module, then internally it will invoke the HTTP message converter. Now, the HTTP message converter will verify these guys added jar files or not. So we are added. Then by using these jar files, what it is doing actually? By using these jar files, the actual conversion from JSON to Java and Java to JSON, the actual conversion is done by whom? Yeah, sorry. Okay, so the actual conversion is doing by what? The third party jar files. The third party jar files. Okay. So similarly, now Java to JSON also conversion done by the Jackson jar file server. So now in this case, we need to get Jackson jar files or not? Yes. So but Spring Boot is all ready made. So that means nowadays 95% every application is implementing REST APIs, and at the same time REST APIs internally using JSON data format. So then Spring Boot definitely is going to give us the respective Jackson jar files in the project setup or not? Yes. Go and verify. Maven dependencies. So what is this? By default, these guys are taken which jar files? Jackson jar files. Jackson core, Jackson data bind. So this Jackson, whatever you can see, Jackson annotation, Jackson core, Jackson data bind, 4 to 5 jar files are there. These are all jar files related to what? The JSON formation, the JSON formatting, JSON to Java, Java to JSON formatting point of view, these 4 jar files. Now tell me, if it is a Spring Web application, what you have to do? If it is a Spring Web application, are you going to get directly? So that is what the difference between Spring versus Spring Boot. And logic implementation point of view, same. Okay, so what we did in Spring application, if it is Spring, so if it is a Spring web application, okay, anyway, I will show you within 2 minutes. See, if you want to create a Spring web application, not Spring Boot web application, what you have to do? You have to create a simple web application as a server, okay, and then you have to add all the jar files. What? Spring web jar file, okay, servlet jar files, and similarly, now REST API implementation point of view, what jars I want? Jackson jars I want to supply to the message converters. So everything is added manually by the developer. That is what. But in this case, Spring Boot point of view, the Spring Web, every jar file automatically given by the whom? Spring Boot project itself. That is the differences you will see. But same jar files, I added manually here, 3 jar files. Okay, Jackson core, Jackson databind, Jackson annotations. So the same thing is already provided by the Spring Boot or not? Okay, yes. Okay. So see here now. Okay. Now you guys got you understood what's happening. Internally, who is doing actual conversion? If I deleted those jar files from my project class path, if okay, the message conversion is going to happen from JSON to Java automatically? No. So it's all depends on the Jackson only. We have to supply Jackson always, or we have to supply JSON also. I mean either JSON, Jackson or JSON, but Jackson is more popular. Jackson is open source. Anyone can use free of cost in our projects. Jackson. So this is what Jackson Core Faster XML, something like that. There is a company, Faster XML and Jackson. They have provided these jar files free of okay as an open source. Simply we are using those things only here. Even individual Jackson jar files you can use at Core Java project also. So if you are interested, go through the Jackson tutorial once, so that in a simple Core Java application also, if you have a string, JSON string, if I given to you, you can convert it as a Java object within one line. You don't need to write down splitting all these things. Simply which class you want, the JSON should be converted to which Java object, write a Java Pojo object and pass it. It will take care. If you are interested, go through it. Otherwise, leave it. Not a big problem. But internally, these are all taken care by the Spring. Okay. So one more, you have one more vendor called as JSON also. JSON from Google, I think. I used JSON versus Jackson. Yeah. So JSON also you have. So I think JSON from the Google. That's why they given JSON. I will do one. JSON jar files. We will verify just a second. Yeah, it's from Google only. That's why they given JSON. So this library provided by the Google company. com.google. Okay, so that's why they given name as a JSON. So you can use even JSON also in your projects. Okay. So see here now. See, we are discussing a lot of theory only yesterday today, but it's not theory. It's a lot of technical discussion. Okay. This is all about your REST API training. It's all technical discussion. Maybe I will not take example today. Again, I have to take an example very carefully, right? So whatever theory we discussed yesterday and today, we have to convert it as a practical example by applying all these formulas, applying all these points. So maybe we don't have much time, but before that, I'll give you one more technical discussion only. Okay, this is all about the JSON. For example, if my application has to support XML, then what I have to do? So HTTP message converters, like however it required JSON to Java, Java to JSON third-party jar files. Similarly, in XML case also, do I need do I need third-party jar files or not? XML to Java, Java to XML point of view, individually, okay, Spring Web application is not supporting. Then what you have to do? You have to add again the respective XML converter Java files, jar files, XML converter jar files you have to add. So you have to identify XML converters, jar files, and you have to add it to your project. In Spring Boot, do you think that is also given by automatically? Jackson is giving automatic, I mean, they are giving as a predefined package or not when you are creating the project. But XML, they are not provided. Why? Their intention here it is, most of the applications are not being used by the, not using XML data format. So why we unnecessarily give the jar files to the, as while project creation itself. So, but everybody is using JSON. So that's why they given by default JSON. So they are not given XML jar files as part of your project. But at the same time, what they did, if you are having a dependency, manually identify the jar file, add to your project, so that again they will support XML to Java, Java to XML in the background. Only thing is our responsibility is what? Here, even though it is a Spring Boot, we have to identify the XML converter jar files and we have to add to pom.xml file. After that, we don't need to do anything. Okay. After that, it will take care of. But okay, whenever you are sending XML data, internally it will invoke XML converter or JSON converter. JSON converter or XML when you are sending XML payload. XML converter or JSON. How it knows? Finally, it is a text. Whether it is a XML or JSON, how controller will know. So that's why I given you one point. You will come to know that what is headers and all. So what is this? We'll make an activity of converting incoming request payload to Java objects. That's why I did not define either JSON or XML here. To Java to respect to based on content type. So that means simply what you will do is whenever you are sending a request from client to server, maybe assume my server application is supporting JSON as well as XML, both. So here you are sending this time XML content. So what you are sending XML payload, name, XML tags and everything. So here you are going to use a header called as content hyphen type and you are going to use application slash XML. Okay, application slash XML. So you have to send this header also. That means you are telling to the server application, hey server, my body request body contains which data? XML data. Then based on this converter, based on this content type header value, which converter will be invoked by the HTTP message converter now? So in this case, you added JSON converter as well as XML converter. Both converters are there in our project. But how it is invoking XML comma JSON now? Yes, based on this. Now it will invoke XML converter jar files. Now tomorrow if you are sending JSON and if you are sending application slash JSON as a content type header, then internally based on this value, what it will do? Yes, Spring Web application will invoke the JSON converter. So this value is going to help us. Okay, fine. Now similarly, the REST services are producing response in JSON as well as XML also. So that means the same thing, sending response, they are sending, if you want in XML, they will give you XML data. Or they are sending response as JSON also. So that means our REST service is producing response in how many formats? 2 formats. So now whose responsibility of which response format you want? Client responsibility or not? I given 2. I am producing you 2. But you will receive always only 1. Which one you want? Either JSON or XML. So then in such case, you will use one more header called as what it is? Accept header. So in this case, while you are sending request itself, you will add one more header, accept application slash XML. So what is the point here it is? That means you are telling sending as part of request XML content and you are expecting response as XML. Yes. Or if you given, okay, content type, this is, and you given here, accept application slash XML. In this case, what is the meaning it is? In this use case, what you are doing? You are telling to the server application, hey server, in the request level I am giving, yes, JSON, content type is JSON. But I want response in, yes, XML. So if you given again JSON, you want response in the JSON. So these two headers will make which response, which request you are sending, which response you are sending, especially at what scenarios? When you are supporting both. If you are supporting only one, that too by default JSON, even you no need to worry about these headers also, but we should have knowledge. We should have the knowledge. So what I am doing, I am just stopping here itself. The reason is, okay, XML message converters, jar files and all, it's very simple. I mean, similarly, even Jackson company only providing one more dependency jar file. I think I did not copy paste it here. Okay, so one more, even Jackson company itself providing for XML to Java, Java to XML, one more jar file it is providing. Just copy the dependency, add to your pom.xml file. I will tell you at the last. You don't try now. I will show you last. We will continue with the JSON. Only thing is, we discussed how JSON versus XML is also going to handle in a theory point of view. In practical point of view, we will take one example in the XML also. I will show you that later. Okay, so you guys are clear now how, okay, we are all theories. Okay, just wait. Sir, could you please share the Spring Framework PDF shown in the today's class? Yeah, it's there in the web module, Mahesh. Okay, just go to the web module PDF. You will find out everything. Okay, Spring Framework PDF you want. Okay, I will upload, no problem. So I will upload Spring Framework also. Whatever I open, right, it is Spring Framework. So you just correlate Spring versus Spring also. Then in confidently in interviews you can say Spring versus Spring Boot. So anyone else is asking you what is the difference between Spring Boot? Spring Boot is making a lot of auto configuration, but Spring Boot is built on top of Spring or not. Logic implementation point of view same. Only thing is project configuration, embedded Tomcat server, you are saving time in these specific scenarios. But after project setup completed for Spring and Spring Boot, I taken 1 day, I taken 10 minutes. Project setup is completed. Now I given a requirement to you. Add a REST service for user creation. Then how much time you are going to take here? How much time you are going to take here? I can say same. Logic implementation wise, there is no change. Only project setup wise, you are going to take longer time in this Spring because you have to identify all the jar files, add Tomcat server, download, add it. But after project setup, both are same. That is what automated in the Spring Boot level. The project setup. Okay, people are struggling every time with the project setup. Let's make automated in a Spring Boot point of view, and they given internal Tomcat server also. Okay, that is how you can answer the interviews. JSP I already completed, Ramesh. Okay, let me save this first. REST API converters. Okay, so tomorrow what we are going to do here it is the same example. Now we are going to make it as the actual REST service. So taking JSON payload from the client and we are converting to the Java object by using an annotation called as request body annotation. So how to use request body annotation, where to use request body annotations, what are the things you have to take care when you are using the request body annotation. So we will discuss slowly one by one. Now practical will start from tomorrow. Okay, so please attend tomorrow also. But this is very important, that discussion what we made yesterday and today. Don't feel like you don't have something to do practice, but you have a lot of things to understand by going through these flow diagrams, going through these running notes, or going through the material. When you are clear with these things, you can play with the code. You can easily write down the code. Okay, don't waste your time like I don't have anything to practice. Please go through these flow diagrams, make your own flow diagrams based on your own understanding, make your own diagrams, how you are going to explain in interview. Feel something like, okay, this question is asked me in interview, how a JSON to Java is happening, how a REST service is working internally. See, simply they will ask you, how your REST service is working internally, can you explain me? Client versus server point of view. Then you have to explain entire flow. If you are saying like I will send JSON, and it will be converted as a Java, then I will ask internally next question. Okay, I know that point. How it is happening internally? Who is doing that? How it is happening automatically? Is it happening automatically? These are all questions will come. But before asking all those questions itself, you have to explain them very clearly. Yes, let me explain. Client level, I will send JSON. At server application, when I implemented my REST service, I will define this REST service is going to accept only JSON or accept only XML, or it will accept JSON comma XML. So based on the content type header value, so I will, whenever client sending JSON, internally HTTP message converter will invoke the JAX and jar files. JAX and jar files are third-party jar files which are responsible for Java to JSON, JSON to Java conversion. So those jar files we have to add manually, but Spring Boot is provided automatically. Now HTTP message converter converted JSON to Java object by following which annotation? Request body annotation. So in this case, we have to write a Java Pojo class based on JSON payload. Like that, you have to explain step by step. Make down the flow, how the flow is going. Make your own notes, make your own points. How you are going to answer in interviews. That is what that will make you difference in the interviews. Don't feel like, okay, sir, I explained. That is what so many people will say, like, I attended the interview, I answered very well. I don't know why I was not selected. You answered in a way like Java to JSON is converted, HTTP message converted is. Yes, everyone will say that. But internally, who is doing? Is it really HTTP message converter is doing? HTTP message converter is doing with the help of the third party jar files. Okay, now you can tell them immediately. If we want to support XML, Spring Boot is not supporting XML by default. We have to get the third party jar files. Then, based on the content type header, value internally HTTP message converter will invoke either a JSON or XML converters. Finally, JSON to Java or XML to Java will be converted. Now it's all Java object so that we can pass it to the service layer and repository layer. Like that, you have to explain in your flow. So that's why please make your own notes, your own flow also. Sir, I'm creating the Spring Web first. Sir, good morning. In my e-commerce project development level, I'm getting Jackson error. Can you please tell me what is that? There are so many reasons to get an error, Nagaraj. Okay. So I cannot say what is the problem. See, it might be parsing problem. It might be JSON issue. It might be JSON syntax issue. It might be your Pojo class issue. So there might be so many problems. There might be any issue to resolve Jackson error. So we have to do the debugging. I cannot say with that. Can you please send all the Spring PDFs? Yes, Kiran, I will do that. Why are you discussing JSP files today, Ramesh? I will not help you. Jar file convert the JSON to object. Okay, but why are we mentioned the annotation? I will come back to that point, Jayasuriya. Okay. I will come back to your question tomorrow. You can ask same question tomorrow. I'll explain. Don't worry. How to migrate project SOAP to REST? SOAP, that's what. You need to identify what is the SOAP body they are sending. Based on that, you have to create JSON body and you have to write a new REST service. Migration. Spring Security PDF, Spring AOP. Spring Security is not discussed yet. Then I will give you Spring Security PDF, Kiran. Right now, I will not give it to you. BCA is enough or go for MCA. It's better to go with MCA, Kalyan, because very less companies are accepting BCA. Google Drive link. So what's happened these many days? Okay, so I'm sending Google Drive link also for everyone. Okay, so let's connect on tomorrow. We will